Hello, and welcome to your Super Room and BubbleFlow Bucket Setup and Tips DVD. What we're going to be showing you is how to set up your grow tent with different forms of growing techniques inside. So whether you have the 2x2, the 2x4, the 4x4, or the 4x8, or even the 8x8, you will see how to put it together by this one example of putting together this 4x8 tent. And we're going to be putting inside an ebb and flow table, one Hydroponic 16, and a 6 BubbleFlow bucket system. Now if you are watching this DVD just to set up the BubbleFlow buckets, then just go and forward until you reach the time where the BubbleFlow bucket starts to begin setup. First, what you're going to do is put the frame of your tent up as shown. It's usually best to first put your tent on the bottom and set the bottom frame up. And then after you set the bottom of the frame up, then you can pull the tent over top of your frame. It's easier with two people, but as you can see, you can do it with just one person. Now give it a good tug on the corners. Sometimes the corners are very tight. Make sure everything goes completely around it so it's nice and snug. Then grab your last two bars that have the overhang on them, and this is where your light is going to be hanging from. You can see the small round circles where the pulleys are going to be attached to, which we're going to show you here very soon. So you put those right in the middle and they just snap right on. And from there, we're going to show you the pulley and how to put the pulley on. Very easy. It just snaps right on to the ring up top and you hang it as shown. Now if you have a different size tent, namely a smaller one, the fan and the filter and how the light is air cooled is a little bit different, but it's basically the same. The part of it comes assembled already for you, so it's pretty self-explanatory how it is air cooled. With this particular 4x8, you can see the fan is actually in the middle between the two lights. Some people like to push at the end. We recommend pulling. If you just have one light, actually pull from your light. With physics, when you pull from a fan, it actually works a little bit stronger than when you're pushing something through. So with this particular one, we put it right in the middle. So it's pulling the air through the lights, pushing it through the other lights. And this way, it stays quite cool. Now, when you hook up the rings to the light, this is a nice easy way to do it, especially if it's just one person. You hook it up and then just pull gently on each side as it slowly raises up. These are very durable, these pulleys, and the string used with them, so you can pull quite a big heavy load. Now this is shown once it's hung up, and you can test it by turning it on before you go any further. We hang the ballasts on the top, as you can see there. You can put those anywhere. You don't necessarily want to put them on the ground, definitely, but you can put them outside of the grow tent. This is one option, what we did. And depending on what size of room you have, this is the electrical box showing you how the cords go in. The main feature that we're going to show you here is the two-sided timer, and that is where both the light and the air-cooled fan that accompanies the light, so whatever is cooling off the light, you want into that same timer, so that when that turns off, they both turn off. When it turns on, it both turns on. And every time you want a time on, for example, the water, you push the tab, one tab in. Every one that goes in is on. And then make sure it is not on the clock up top. That means it's working. Then after you hang your lights up, make sure they're working. You can put down your safety pool cover. And this is used in case there's any leaks or if you have any accidents. It will protect one more layer of protection for your floor. Now, after you have put this together, next comes your activated carbon filter for your bigger grow rooms. If you have the smaller one, you'll see with the odor sock that it fits basically directly on the light. And that's pretty self-explanatory. The fan goes on one end, the carbon filter goes on the other. So what we first do with these bigger ones is you want to make a complete seal, so you cut those as shown perfectly around there so there's no air that can get through each cut piece of that foam tape. And then now what you can do is drill with the sheet metal screws that go self-tapping right in the top, so it makes it very secure and light and air-proof. And this big carbon filter filters your air and takes away all smells and cleans your air. It's going to be put on the outside of your growing room. And what you do is you see it as shown. You can put it just directly straight on top. This actually does push in. It's a very strong fan for most all-size rooms. And with the other ducting, what you're going to do is cut it so that your fan will reach the top of your grow room. Now what this fan is pulling air from your grow room, bringing air through in the flaps on the bottom and through the other holes, and it's taking all that air from the grow room and it's pushing it in through this carbon filter. That's why it's cleaning the room that it's going to be put in, so there's no smell, as said before. And after you've measured it from the fan to the very top of your grow room tent, as you can see, you place it on one of the top ones and you secure it on the inside so it's tight, so there's no air going through there. You don't want any air or any light leaks going in or out of your grow tent. You want to make sure everything is completely dark when you zip it up. Now first what we're going to do is show you the simple ebb and flow table. This is more traditional old school way of growing hydroponics. It's not quite as fast. You'll see after we set this up we actually had tomato plants grow in all three of these, and you can see the results. But it's basically very simple, straightforward. You just do one fill, screwing in the fill drain there, and the other one is the overflow. So what happens, that other one we just put in, that's where the pump pushes water through and fills it all the way up to this level shown here, where we're screwing in now. And when it gets to that point, it'll overflow back into the reservoir. Now this other one, the green one, where the pump is hooked up to, where it pushes water up, that goes on for 15 minutes, some say do it a half hour at a time, fills up about once every 3 to 4 hours. And when the pump turns off, the water goes back down through the pump. When the pump's motor is off, that's where the water actually goes back down through it. So there should be no water other than a small little bit remaining when the pump is off. And with this method is a good way. You can use rock wool cubes, 6-inch rock wool cubes, which we'll show later. And you can do as many as you want, which is a good feature of it. You could do a bunch of smaller Rockwell cubes and do basically a sea of a lot of plants. Or you can actually even use this with soil and set it for once a week and do a light porous soil solution where you have some repellent and absorbent. Now here's where we're going to show you the BubbleFlow buckets. Now these are pretty straightforward and very easy to set up as well. You have your T's that are going to be screwed, basically pushed. It's easier to do it when you turn it as shown into the top and the bottom one of each bucket. And then you're going to connect the hose to the top and the bottom. They're all pretty much the exact same size. There's a few odd-shaped ones, and what we'll show you here in a second of where those go. But first, just put together all the same size ones and hook them all together. Again, it's easier to wiggle them back and forth, or you might want to spin them. They are pretty tight. Some are tighter than others. So you want to make sure they're nice and secure in there. And when you set this up, the longer ones, the longer pieces, those go on the back. Now, if you're using at least a 12 or 24 bucket system, you can actually invert this bottom piece so that the water actually pushes down all the way from the pump all the way to the back and the bottom where we're showing now. We're not doing it with this one because it's a 6 bucket system, so it's actually pushing water through the front, as you can see very soon. But if it's a larger one, you want to push water out the back. That way it gets water a little bit more generously to all buckets. Now to set up the air pump, you just screw that in tightly, and you screw your manifold in, push it in, and each one of these are going to go to an air stone. So simply put your 1/4-inch tubing on each one of these, and some of these have extra holes attached to the manifold. If they do, you can just do a U-turn with one piece that folds over to the next. So it's a closed loop for those two holes that go out. So now you push it through the hole. There is a hole drilled on every single bucket. If you can't see it, it's usually on the side of where the other holes are for the larger 3/4-inch holes where you put your T's in. It's usually right above that. You might have to feel with your hand. And simply push through the 1/4-inch tubing in each one and put the air stone right in the middle. Now we have the reservoir on the outside. So what we're going to do is cut small slits into the net opening of your grow tent. Make sure they're just small because you don't want them to be big, because they also helps a little bit, not very much, with bugs, even though the slits are quite big. So it's not that big of a deal that you're doing this at all. And the reason why we're putting the reservoir on the outside is because to keep the temperatures down. You don't want them in direct sunlight, direct light from the heat. Ideally, the temperatures of your water stay a little bit cooler. Now, a tip with the grow buckets, BubbleFlow buckets, if it ever turns out that you see your roots maybe might be turning a little less than pure white, it might be that it's a little bit warm. They like to be a little bit cooler. Now, finishing setting up your BubbleFlow buckets, your manifold that was where the pump is attached to, that goes directly into the bottom reservoir, and the top outlet that has that long piece of 1/2-inch tubing, that is simply just so you can empty your water out of your reservoir. Rarely do you use that, but it's just something that we offer so it makes it easier to empty out your reservoir. Now when you're emptying out your buckets, the water will not pull out of your buckets when you open that flap for the ball valve. You actually have to put a separate pump into the buckets so they'll all come out at once. An easy way to do this is a very